Hey everyone, so today I'm going to talk about something called deep cloning. So basically I'll be talking something interesting regarding references. So yeah, let's get right into it. So basically consider I have a variable defined here named object1, and I'll basically add a few properties in it. I'll add a name property and a categories property, which will be an array. Now I'll tell you later why I have structured it like this, like why one of them is an array. Okay, so now consider I want to copy the content of this object, and I want to make sure that I only change the properties of that object, the new object I create. And I don't want anything to happen to object1. I want object1 to stay the same as it is, but I want to create a new object which will have the same content as object1, and I'll only modify the new object, which will be object2, and we want to use it later or perform operations only on it without changing object1. So I'll be making another object, object2, which will be equal to object1. Now let's just console log this and see what's happening. So here's object1, and then there's object2. So now both object1 and object2 should be same, since I have equalized them over here. So let's go and check that out. So over here you can see object1, object2 are the same, but now I want to make changes to this object2, and when I make changes to object2, I don't want anything to happen to object1. So let's go ahead and try that as well. So consider I want to change the name from Tom to Samuel only for object2. So what I can do is object2 dot name equals Samuel. Alright, so after this we are console logging, and now basically we expect that object1 should have name Tom, categories funny side, and object2 should have name as Samuel and the category same as this. So let's see what we get. Just gonna refresh. So here, yeah, here you can see what I'm talking about. I changed only object2, but we get Samuel both in object1 and object2 as well, whereas we only expected Samuel to be there in object2. Now why is that? Why is this happening? Just gonna bring this over here. Right. So why is this happening right now? So basically what happens is when I initialize object2 in this manner, I just equate it with object1. What happens is object2 is pointing to the same reference in memory as object1. So whenever I change object2, object1 also gets changed, because they are both pointing to the same memory space. So that is not what we want. We only want to change object2 provided object1 stays however it is. So how do we do that? So let me just comment this out for now. Just comment both of these lines out, and we'll try to see another approach to this. There is another approach to solving this, which is called using the spread operator. So I'll show you what that means and how that happens. Alright, so I'll put all the properties from object1 and object2. So I'll spread them out, and then I will only change the property name into Samuel. So what basically happens here is we are spreading all the values. This dot to dot means spread. We are spreading all the values from object1 into object2, and we are specifying the value we want to modify, which is name. So now what this does is, so let's first check out what we get. Right, in the previous condition both of them were getting modified when we used to initialize like this, but now we are initializing object2 in this manner. Let's see what we get. I'm just going to clear this out. I'm going to save this, and then we get object1, object2, but now here you can see name of object1 is Tom and name of object2 is Samuel. So this is what we expected, right? This is what we wanted, only object2 to change and object1 to not be modified. So this is well and fine. This is what we expected, this is what we are getting. So you might think we are done here, but no, that's not the case. There is something kind of weird about this as well. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. So for the name property it worked, but now let's try for the categories property. Alright, I will only change the categories within object 2, and what we expect is the categories in object 2 should also be changed, right? Should only be changed, and object 1 should remain as it is. So let's see, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if I do object 2 dot categories dot push, and I'll add another value, happy. Alright, so basically now what we expect is object 2 should have funny, sad and happy, and object 1 should have funny and sad. That's all, right? That's all what we expect. So let's see what happens. I'm going to clear this out again. I'm going to save this. Okay, so Tom, Samuel, as we expected, is different. And now for the categories, we expect object 2 to have funny, sad and happy, and object 1 to have funny and sad. So let's see. Oops, over here we can see categories has funny, sad and happy, as well as object 2 which also has funny, sad and happy. This is not what we expected. We expected happy to be added only to object 2. Why is it getting added in object 1 as well? Now this is where even this has a limitation using the spread operator. So spread, now why does this happen? I'll talk about that. So spread operator basically, as I said, it creates a new reference, so it doesn't point to the same memory space, but it doesn't point to the same memory space only for the first properties, like as in non-nested properties. So for example, here it's straightforward. There is name, Tom. So this, when we do the same for object 2, when we initialize object 2, name property will have a new reference. But in categories, it has an array. So what happens in this case is it's getting more deeply nested. But when we spread and initialize an object, it only it only has a new reference for the initial properties, only for the non-nested properties, right? But so that is why when we push over here happy, it since categories in object 2 is a nested property similar to an object 1, so they both are pointing to the same memory space. So when we push in object 2, it also, the same behavior is seen over here, because object 1 categories and object 2 categories are pointing to the same memory space. So now what is the approach to this? How can we find a way where, you know, none of this will happen, where there will be no change such as this, and object 2 can be independently changed without modifying object 1 at all? So what can we do about that? Okay, so for this we are going to check out another approach. So let's comment this out now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to initialize object 2 in another way, which is going to work for, you know, if we want to, while modifying each of this. So let's see which approach I'm talking about. So now I'll initialize object 2 as check this out, JSON dot parse, and then JSON dot stringify object 1. So this is another, you might be curious, what is this? Why are we initializing it like this? Why are we initializing object 2 in this manner? So basically I'm going to show you the magic what this does. So JSON.stringify, JSON.parse. Basically it converts all the objects in this into strings, like in your JSON format which we have, which is a string based format for the properties and key value for the keys and values, and then it parses it back. So what is the benefit? Why is this working? First, before I say that, let's just check it out if it really works or not. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna I'm just gonna change the name property first and show you object 2 dot name equals let's make it Samuel. Sorry, let's make it Samuel, and object 2 dot categories dot push, you want to push happy. So in the previous case, as we saw, both categories were getting updated, but now when I initialize it in this manner, let's see what happens, right? I'm gonna save it. not the output here. So the name changed, Tom and Samuel, as we expected. But now let's see. Over here you can see the array has 2 values only in object 1, which is funny and sad, and object 2 only has happy, as we expected. So we only wanted object 2 to have happy and in the categories, and object 1 to remain the same. So now this totally worked, right? Initializing object 2 in this way and pushing them like this, modifying those values like this, totally worked. Now we have object 2 completely independent from object 1, and everything works as expected. So now why does this work? It's because when we JSON stringify something, it converts this whole thing into a JSON format. JSON format is nothing but similar to like this. Everything becomes a key, like everything, all the key value pairs become string, so everything becomes a string. So what this does is, as I said, when we use this way to initialize, in that way it only does a top level like referencing. But when we do stringify, it does a deep level referencing. So it goes into the nested objects as well and allocates a new memory space to them as well. So which ultimately makes this completely independent, because JSON.stringify goes deep inside and even into these properties, and it assigns a new memory to them. So nothing from object 2 gets connected to object 1. So that's why this ends up working. But this also has some sort of a drawback. Basically, using JSON.parse, JSON.stringify has a problem, mostly because it's kind of avoided usually, because consider if I have a function in this within this object. So what it does is it will also stringify that function, and when we use parse and all, it will be a big problem to retrieve that function, because everything inside that function and that function as a whole itself will be a string, and that is not what we want. So that's why JSON.stringify is also avoided. Yeah, sure, if you don't have a function, then you can definitely use this if you just have normal these type of values. But what if you have a function as well? So in that case, the best approach to doing this, to initializing a variable which has to be the same as this object, and you have many nested properties and a function as well, and you want to create another variable object 2 which will be same as this, and while modifying none of this, nothing in object 2 should be same as object 1. So the best approach to do this would be to either make your own logic of recursion, which will deeply go through everything and copy everything inside object 2, or the more easier way is to use something called Lodash, and this is used frequently in companies. So what Lodash does is, it is basically a library that gives you a lot of predefined functions, so you can use those functions directly instead of having to write them all on your own. So if you go over here to the repository, wait, I'll just go to the Lodash documentary, in fact, documentation. Here there will be something called a deep clone. If you search for it, deep clone, yeah, clone deep, sorry. Yeah, so this clone deep does exactly what I said. Like, as I said, you can create your own custom function which can recursively go inside and copy every value inside object 2, or you can just directly do npm install Lodash, use this clone deep. You can just import clone deep, and you can do let object 2 equals to clone deep object 1, and that's it. It will do the same thing. It will add all the values from object 1 in object 2, and it will properly nest through everything and add everything inside object 2, making it completely independent without you having to write your own functions. So this is an easy way to do, and this is the most kind of the most used way to do it. So yeah, this is something you can follow. There are many other different functions it gives, but for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going through this. You can give it a try. So basically, I'll just show you quickly how this is done. So just install npm ilodash, do npm ilodash and install it. I have that already installed, so I'm just going to import Lodash. I'm just going to import clone deep from Lodash, and then all I have to do is I'll just comment this part out for now because we want to see the new approach, and I'll initialize object 2 equals clone deep object 1. Alright, so now I can perform the same operations that I had over here. Just add them here, see if it works. So now object 2 should have Samuel and happy over here after sad, and object 1 should have Tom, funny, and sad over here. So let's see if that works. I'm gonna go to the React app, I'm gonna refresh all this, I'm gonna refresh the page, and here you can see object 1 has funny and sad, object 2 has funny, sad, happy, and the name as Samuel. So you could clearly see that the Lodash approach also worked. This made things so much easier, and now this is not gonna throw errors even for functions or anything else. You just have to directly clone it like this, and then you can modify any property of it, and now this is going to be complete independent constant variable. So this is an easier and better approach. So yeah, that's all about this tutorial. If you liked and enjoyed it, then please hit the subscribe button, and if you would want me to go through more about Lodash or more interesting stuff like this, then please hit the like button and comment down below if you would want to know about something more or pass on some feedback. Thank you so much.